Hello and welcome to the Bestseller Experiment, where we continue to discover what makes a bestseller and inspire you to start, finish and publish your book. I'm Mark Stay.
And I'm Mark Devoe, and before we dive in, we'd like to say thank you to everyone, all of our patrons out in Patreon world, and also all of our Bestseller Academy members who make this podcast happen. And if you have been enjoying this podcast and you're thinking, it's about time I maybe like chucked a few quid in, a few dollars to help pay for the cost of this, please pop over to bestsellerexperiment.com/support. And you will get tons and tons of goodies. You'll get hundreds, I want to say hundreds of hours. I think it's over 100 hours now of deep dives. You'll also get the extended edition of these podcasts that we've been doing for the last few weeks as a little test to see if you like them. And you will also get loads and loads of other goodies, such as something a lot of people don't realize, Mark, questions to put forward to people that we're going to be interviewing in the future. Oh, yeah. Hear your name and ask some of your favorite authors some of those burning questions you always wanted. So do make sure that you support this podcast, help it keep on the road. It's bestsellerexperiment.com/support. And Mark, as much as supporting this podcast is important, supporting authors is important as well. And I see, for anyone who's watching this on YouTube, I see this rather lovely, freshly pressed white t-shirt. Look at that, with this big medallion-shaped Woodville logo on it. Tell me all about that.
Well, this is what everyone in Paris is wearing. I'd like you to know.
I was going to say.
This is the Witches of Woodville. I'm selling t-shirts, basically. I'm selling t-shirts and tote bags, inspired by our friend Jeevani Chirika, who, and I'll put a link to her thing in the show notes as well. She's fantastic author, also writes as Rhoda Baxter, but she made the comment. She's selling t-shirts with like writing slogans on them, and she was saying, I make more selling every one of these than I do from selling a copy of my book. And so I thought, actually, I've got this logo because I sketched this in a book, and then I gave it to Andy Bowden, who does the covers for my short stories and stuff, and he sketched this up and gave me, and this logo is on the website. It's on the stamp that I use. I thought this could be really cool in a t-shirt. So there's t-shirts, there's hoodies, there's all sorts of cool stuff. Yeah, hoodies as well.
As well, just in time for winter.
And tote bags. So I've got tote bags with little phrases on and the same logo. So that I've got a phrase there. Books ain't just for toffs, which is a quote from Faye Bright in Babes in the Wood, the second book, which is my, because there's that books are my bag thing that you see it in the UK. Yeah. Well, it's to raise awareness of books, but it is very jolly hockey sticks middle class. Books are my bag. Well, I've gone, books ain't just for toffs, This is the working class version.
You're going for mass market, Mark.
Exactly, mate. Exactly. And also, this is one of my favourite. I got phrases from the books as well. So, blimmin' heck is one of my favourite shirts. I'll be wearing this at the Comic-Con tomorrow. So, it didn't really cost anything to set up. I'm using a company called T-Mill, and they take a cut of every sale, quite a significant cut of every sale. But it's a nice little touch. And I did a signing today at Waterstones in Ashford, and thank you to Waterstones in Ashford, lovely staff there, lovely people. And I wore this shirt shamelessly, and it went out on social media, and immediately I've had a couple of people go, where can I get that shirt? It's like, step right this way. So
you're going to get a ton more now, Mark. Now you're wearing it on the official Bestseller Experiment podcast episode on YouTube. I love it. This is bonkers, because I think only a few weeks ago you were talking about setting up your kind of author store where people are putting orders in, and you or your team of magic elves in the background.
No, it's me. It's right, just me.
You. Which I think we let's be open about it. I mean, it's like you end up having to do everything. And how's that going? I'm curious as to how that's gone, because
it's been great. It's been great. Like at the time of recording, so we're recording this a bit ahead of time for various reasons. But at the time of recording, Babes in the Wood is a year old, so we're having a sale, half price sale on Babes in the Wood, and I've done that on the bundles as well. You can buy all 3 books, and I sign and I dedicate them, and I put the library stamp, and it's been great. I'm getting orders every day. So and the thing is, because I've been a bookseller, and I've worked in a sales department, I'm thinking, I have a sale and it's Black Friday soon. And I'm thinking, I'm actually quite good at this. I know how to do this. Whereas, Amazon marketing and Facebook ads, it's a whole new world, and it's always changing. And the rule, the house always wins as well with that.
Yes,
it's
totally.
I got into that. I thought I don't enjoy this. Whereas this shifting physical books and stuff. Yeah. I know how to do this. I'm enjoying it. I'm having great fun.
I think it's great. Cool. And it's like you're our man out in the world there, trying every single thing. I mean, it's funny because
I'm a proper Del Boy.
You are a Del Boy.
Garage full of t-shirts.
Does that make me Rodney, Mark? That's what
you plonk up.
But the brilliant thing is that when you start to try, and this is really to inspire everyone out there who's maybe thinking, things aren't getting going, or I'm waiting to get signed and I've got a book out there on indie. There's so much more that you can do. But for me, I mean, when I went through this process with Jen's book, and we do it every Christmas still as well, but with that first launch of the book, we were literally we'd been like trying to find the perfect shape envelope that wasn't too big, that didn't trip us over the postal rate. I was installing international postal rate plugins for the website, so it would automatically work out if you ordered it in England. It would. I mean, it's like setting up an entire business. But the thing is that once you start doing it, there's something really, I'm sure you're experiencing this, there's something really lovely about seeing a little order drop in for your book, not for someone else's. It's
dopamine.
exciting.
Talk about dopamine.
Dopamine, it is.
Oh, yeah. It's been
like,
great. No, the setup was a bit of a... Actually, Simon, who does my website, because we're using WooCommerce, because it works well with my website. And Queeve McDonald started doing this. It made me, because Queeve, set up a store before me, and I saw it and I asked him for advice, and Elaine, his wife, who runs things as well, and I thought actually that's a really good idea, and so we set it up with WooCommerce, and Simon, who does my website, he kind of did the back end technical stuff, but I had to sit down and figure out the different bundles, what I wanted to charge, the weights of it. I was weighing everything, all these different bundles in jiffy bags, and then going on the Royal Mail site, and of course I'm launching this every other week here. There's a Royal Mail postal strike as well, which is
great timing. Personally apologising to every order. I'm really sorry, but you're
So once it's set up, it's run, and you can do things like, when I thought, I want to have a sale. Is that a big faff? Couldn't have been easier. It's so great. You can set the start and end dates for the sale, and it takes care of everything for you. So, I'm going to be doing a lot of this. I'm loving it.
That's really good. We're going to talk about a little bit more in the post-interview discussion about running businesses and creating things, because it comes up in the interview today, which is fascinating. But I think it's, for people who've never gone down that route, I think for me, what it does is it connects the author to their readers in a very, very unique way. But you do need to do something slightly different. You do need to, like the fact that you're kind of signing books and stamping them means that it's like a limited edition version of what they can just go out and buy in the store, or order on Amazon for maybe, a different price. So I think it's about thinking about how you can make the offering, or just pushing the fact that you're supporting the author directly.
Yeah,
that you get more of the proceeds, right?
I'm already thinking ahead to when book 4 comes out. What can I offer that no one else can? Yeah. So if you pre-order it from me, you'll get a little extra something. So it's definitely the way to go. Very entrepreneurial, Mark. And I think as well, it really gives people a bit of food for thought, which is why we're here, is to kind of like put those ideas out there and you tell it how it is. I mean, if it was a complete failure, you'd be on here telling it's a complete nightmare. Yeah. But just for people who are thinking of going into, I mean, without getting too technical, but people who are thinking of going into this and using something like WooCommerce, what WooCommerce is it's a plugin. If you're using WordPress as your platform, which I think 65% of the world's websites are, you can get WooCommerce as a plugin. But you do need to be aware with WooCommerce that, they give you the main plugin for free. But then if you need this little bit or that little bit or this little bit, it's like, $49 a month or $59. And before you know it, but actually, to be honest, you can do a lot. You can actually do a ton without having to pay for the premium plugins. But if you want to do something a bit special, that's how they do it. So you can it can cost a lot down the road,
But for I think authors, it's not too much of an expense.
Well, this is all done through my web guy. So he charged me about £200 to set all of this up. Which
there's a setting up cost.
It paid for itself in the first few days. That's so.
Yeah.
And he's gone in there, and WooCommerce don't. They take a tiny commission from each sale. But there's
actually they don't know. It comes. The commission's just from Stripe or PayPal or whoever you're using
that's true.
to process. But WooCommerce itself is just a standalone package, which they get you if you want something extra. But we used WooCommerce with Jen's book, so it was very good.
But it works like a dream.
It's great.
It's a doll.
It's very clever, really, very clever stuff. So if you have set your own shop up, if you've had massive success, maybe Mark, there's someone out there, and this is the only way they sell their book, we want to hear from you. Maybe we'll get you on the podcast. But if you've had successes or if you've had complete disasters, if you've done it and it hasn't worked for you, drop us a note. Pop over to bestsellerexperiment.com, click on the Contact Us page and send us a message about how it worked for you, because I think this is an area which we should definitely delve into. It's a whole new world, as some Disney film once said, I think. But let's dive in. Let's talk about this incredible interview that we have today with A.G. Riddle. A.G. Riddle, or Jerry, as I call him. He spent 10 years starting internet companies before retiring to pursue his true passion, which is writing fiction. And the boy has done well. His novels have sold over 4 million copies worldwide, been translated into 24 languages. They're being developed into feature films, including his hit debut, The Atlantis Gene. We discuss all kinds of stuff. We discuss becoming an author later in life, combining self-publishing and working with traditional publishers, and his 3 key tips for writers. Fantastic. So let's dive in and listen to Mark chatting with the incredibly entrepreneurial A.G. Riddle. A.G. Riddle, welcome to the podcast. How are you today, sir?
Doing well. How are you doing?
Very, very good. Thank you. Now, very, very pleased to have you on the podcast, particularly with your new novel, Lost in Time, which is extraordinary because time travel novels and a mystery. I mean, writing a time travel novel is difficult. Writing a mystery is difficult. You've decided for some insane reason to bundle the two together. Why did you do that? And did it make your brain implode?
Yes, it did make my brain implode on several occasions. And I hope it doesn't make readers' brains implode. It may. But I mean, I think I did it to really challenge myself and to, try something new. I mean, a lot of my past novels have been sort of blending genres and combining different ideas. And I think that, there are plenty of readers who don't enjoy it. But the ones that do really, really enjoy it. And I'm one of those readers that loves something that is a little different. So this is a murder mystery that has time travel and it's sort of a coming of age story too. So that's what got me sort of interested in writing it.
Is that where I'm going to ask the question I swear I would never ask, which is that where you get your ideas from? Is it very much an X plus Y equals Z kind of combination for you? Is that what kind of fires you up?
Well, I think so. I mean, like early in my career, I think part of what I got into is the science and history, or like this big idea that I wanted to explore. And I think as I've written more, I've gotten more into characters that might intrigue me, but I'm still really a huge geek. And so technology ideas, I mean, the idea behind Lost in Time was really about this machine that could send prisoners, convicted, murderers and genocidal dictators and serial killers and the worst of humanity back in time. Like, what if you had a machine where you could just get rid of all these people that I think the entire world would agree that we just don't want on Earth, that are typically sent to prison for life. And so I was like, what would the implications of that be and where might that lead? But yeah.
Fantastic. Great high concept stuff. Now, what's fascinating to me about Lost in Time is you've been a very successful author, mostly self-publishing. I think Departure was published by Harper Voyager. But Lost in Time, you're being published by Head of Zeus. Talk about that switch from indie to traditional. Have there been challenges with that, or has it been nice to sort of relinquish some of that responsibility?
Well, I think it's a bit of both. I mean, I would say that the transition hasn't been as sharp for me because Head of Zeus is a publisher I've worked with essentially since the beginning of my career, 2014. First published in 2013. And so they've been publishing me in print in the UK and Commonwealth for that period of time. And so they're really just taking over the ebook piece. And I've always been traditionally published in audio and then traditionally published in other languages. So, I've just gotten to a point where I really want to focus on writing. And I mean, that's what I was looking for is to give them a little more responsibility, a little more of the revenue that's coming in and, to focus on writing. I think it's for me a bit of reflecting on what I think I'm good at and what I really want to do every day with, there's only so many hours I can write in a day that are good. You can keep going, but I think it's not a great idea. But there's a lot of differences in self-publishing and traditional publishing. And I think it's incumbent upon all of us to sort of reflect and say, what do I want out of this and what is the right fit? Because I think the industry is always shifting. I mean, it's this idea of this is what's right for me for the rest of my life, I think no longer really exists. It's like, what is right now? For me, for right now, I think it's been a good fit and it's been a great experience. I mean, I like the Head of Zeus, the people who work there, and I like the work they do. And it's been good.
That's fascinating. So from the very start, you're kind of working as a hybrid author. So with Head of Zeus, and your first novel, Atlantis Gene, which we'll go back and talk to about how that came about in more detail in a second. So were you actively going out and approaching publishers and saying, hey, I've got this book, I've got the US rights, would you be interested in, UK Commonwealth rights? Or did they approach you? How did that come about?
It's a good question. So I've never approached a publisher. I self-published the book, mostly an ebook in the US in March of 2013. And I got an agent in Asia shortly after. And then he introduced me to an agent in New York that did Europe. And the agents sort of found foreign publishers that were willing to publish my work. And things sort of went from there. I mean, Head of Zeus was one of the early publishers that liked the books and published them and did a great job.
Fantastic. Brilliant. Well, look, let's go back to the Atlantis Gene, because this is where it all really started for you. You had a successful internet company, very much kind of self-made man, and then you're sitting down to write, which, as we've discovered over many years of this podcast, writing is largely about failing. It's about sort of getting it wrong, a little less wrong, and people telling you this doesn't work, go back and do it again. How did you cope with that? How was that experience for you?
Well, I got it wrong a lot, actually. So as you said, I started an internet company in college, and I did that for 10 years, and I learned a lot from it. I mean, I learned a lot about myself. I learned a lot about business, and I'd been I would call myself somewhat successful, successful enough to take a little time off and try to figure out what I really wanted to do. And, the parts of my career that I liked were creating something. I mean, sitting down, writing code, and running the business was not something that I particularly enjoyed. I also didn't think I was particularly good at it. And so I was kind of looking for a career where I could just focus on the creative parts of what I was doing. And what I really loved was reading science fiction after work every day. I mean, I'd come home from work and read. And I thought, gosh, if I could write, focus on storytelling, that's something that I particularly enjoy. So I took a lot of time to write that first novel. I mean, it took me 2.5 years to write it. And it was fairly arduous. I mean, the first stuff I wrote, I thought was just terrible. I mean, I read it. I just thought, nobody's ever going to want to consume this in any format. And I just kept at it. I mean, I had the luxury of time. And I do think if you want to write, time is the greatest input you can put into it. And I think reflecting on what you're writing and figuring out your strengths and your limitations are really important things, but I put a lot of time into the first novel and it took off. And I was really a little surprised and very thankful for it.
Let's talk about that time, because if you're in a situation where you've got the day to yourself, how will you break it? Yeah, and you spoke earlier, I think it's very interesting where you said, yes, you could write all day, but after a certain point, it stops being good. So are you an early morning writer? Do you write in the evenings? How are you breaking up your day?
I typically write in the morning. I find that, those are my best hours. I have the most ideas then. The prose is the best then. And then in the afternoon, I typically will, edit or return emails or do, whatever needs doing, and then sort of take care of things around the house. That's my schedule.
And on a slightly more esoteric level, the time to sort of reflect on your writing and think about it. What were you doing in those 2.5 years? How many drafts were you writing? Were you getting feedback from people?
Yeah, I wish I knew how many drafts I read. I mean, I must have written that first book 20 times. And a lot of it was, I had the story. I knew the story that I wanted to tell. I had it sort of mapped out. And then I think, it's like, at least for me, I thought it didn't match the quality of the story. So I was like, I've got to get better at telling this story. And so for me, it was a lot sort of like a choose your own adventure. It's like, all right, the dialogue isn't great. Let me go get a book on dialogue, or let me sort of look at books or TV shows that I think are really good at dialogue. Why are they good at dialogue? Like, why do I want to hear the next thing that this person has to say? But I think it took a lot of time, because for me, it was a learning experience. It was like going back to college or something. But I didn't let anyone read it. I let my wife read it finally. And yeah.
That feels like a very methodical approach. Okay, let's focus on the dialogue. Let's focus on the prose. Is that who you are? Are you very much a methodical person? You're sort of taking stuff apart, figuring out how it works, then putting it back together again?
I was then. I don't know. I mean, now I think I'm maybe a little more focusing on my passions and what I want to work on. And I think to a certain extent on a lot of those things, dialogue and pacing, I've probably gotten as good as I'm going to get. Like, I don't know that I'm going to get a lot better, but I think that in terms of figuring out the stories that I really want to tell, I mean, that's where I sort of put the work in. And because I do think that your passion comes through in the novel. Like, even if you're not the greatest storyteller, if you're really into something and it's something you love, I do think that readers can sense authenticity coming through.
Absolutely. Now, the Atlantis Gene, as you say, what did really, really well and inspired the Atlantis Plague, the Atlantis World. Had you planned out further books in this series, or did it sort of catch you on the hop? Was there some kind of game plan about how the career was going to play out?
I don't know that my game plan was very deep. I mean, it was really just, I had the trilogy planned out, and I'd hoped to write a trilogy. The story, I think, supported 3 books, 3 major acts. And yeah, my plan was really to publish that first book. I had a little bit written on the second one when it came out, rough draft, but my plan was really see what the world thinks of this first book. This is something I should be doing, and then just kind of go from there.
And here we are. I mean, you've had this incredible career, and it's fantastic to hear this hybrid career, this international career as well. And I saw that you have tips for writers starting out, and this fascinates me. And there are three key points here: defining success, invest in yourself, invest in your work. Can you tell us a bit more about that? So defining success is an important one. What for you was success?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big believer that defining success is probably the foundation of your career. And I think that if you let someone else define success for you, it's going to be pretty agonizing. I mean, for others, for any given person, success might mean paying your mortgage, or putting your kids through college, or winning a literary award, or telling the story that you want to tell, or being traditionally published, or being self-published and, having complete control. I think that where you get jammed up is sort of comparing your career to what someone else thinks, all right, this is success. And And I think that once you define success, you don't have to stick to it. Like success in 2014 could look like one thing, and success in 2022 could look very different. And I think it's incumbent upon all of us to sort of reflect and say, you know, what is success? What do I want out of this? And yeah, I think that's important. And then I think investing in yourself. I think you've got to, if you want to do this and you know what success is, you got to figure out how to get yourself to that point. And it might mean classes. It might mean hiring cover artists or experts or editors or book coaches or whatever it means, right? Like, I think that's important. And I think in the environment we're in, you've got to have a really polished product. I think you've got to invest in it. You need professional cover. You need a professional edit. And I think that readers in 10 years ago were willing to perhaps overlook a lot of things that they want today, because there's a lot of books out there and they are looking for quality for their time and money.
Absolutely. Atlantis Gene came along in a time of your life, like you say, you were looking for a change. Had you always written as a child, or was this something that was new to you? Was it something that came to you later in life?
It was totally new to me. I mean, growing up, I never thought about becoming an author. I mean, it was never even in the realm of possibility. I mean, I grew up in a small town in North Carolina. My grandfather owned a lumber company. My dad owned this industrial sign company. And that's sort of, I figured I would go into one of those businesses. And, went to college, and the internet was really taking off. And I mean, I ended up getting in the internet industry, obviously. But yeah, it's something I sort of came to it from a love of books and storytelling.
Mm-hmm. And were there any doubts? Because as I say, you had this wonderful methodical approach to it, but writing is such a kind of nebulous thing, such a personal thing, in that, you're writing something, you're putting your heart and soul into it, and you're putting your head over the parapet, and you get reviews and what have you. Were there any doubts that you were doing the right thing? And if so, how did you overcome them?
I think there was no end to the doubts. I mean, it was a doubt train every day of the week when I was writing that first novel. I mean, the first stuff I wrote, I thought, God, this is terrible. Like, this is never going to work. If it doesn't get better, I'm going to give up. And I think that's very common. And I think for me, the advantage I had is that, internet startups, the sort of mentality you have is that, you create a base product and you iterate from there and you try to get better. And at some point, if you think you're not getting better, why are you not getting better? It's sort of this, I think that my perspective helped me a lot. Having a perspective of, you create something, you reflect on it, you study it, and you look at all the data that you have and you try to get better. And I think that helped me a great deal. And I think to some extent when you're early in your career, ignorance is bliss. Like, you don't see all your problems, but there is some magic associated with writing something and creating something. And I think, one of the big moments for me in my career is I went back and read something that I thought was terrible. I thought, that's actually pretty good. I mean, it's better than I thought it was. I mean, it's not terrible. Like, maybe I can do this. But I think releasing the book and hearing the reader response is what really has been the wind at my back. And I continue to study the negative feedback, but I think earlier in your career, I'm a big believer that you need some degree of success early in your career. It's a vitamin that you have to take.
You mentioned their feedback. Now, if you're working on a internet product or an app, or it's like washing powder or whatever, people will give you feedback and you can go back and make improvements. And but when you're getting feedback from readers and you're taking that moving forward, is that something you've ported over from your business life in engaging with that feedback? Because I know a lot of authors simply won't read the reviews, and I can totally understand why. But is that something that you work with?
Yeah, I mean, to some extent, I do. One of the things I learned is that, I mean, in the internet startup life, like, we were used to launching something that would have 10 to 100,000 users within a month or 2 months, and And you get an immense amount of feedback, and a lot of it's quantitative. I mean, you see, all right, we had this many people land on this page and this many people click this and that. And, it's data driven. And I think that to a certain extent, when you're working on a team, you're a bit removed from it. It doesn't really hit you in the gut when, if somebody doesn't like what you've created. You sit in a conference room and you say, all right, what have we learned? What do we need to do? And how do we get there? I think a book is, the thing I learned is a book is fundamentally different. I mean, if you've done it right and you've invested some piece of yourself in it, it does hurt. I mean, I think it hurts and it helps. Like, readers saw things early in my work that I never would have seen, that I never would have realized. And it's helped me immensely. It's very painful at times to sort of look that in the face, but I think it helps. And I think the key is sort of knowing where you are and realizing that this is going to hurt. Like, if you haven't invested in the book, it's probably not going to be this big breakout success anyways. It doesn't matter. But if you have invested in the book, when people criticize it, it does hurt. And I think they're really criticizing you and, your abilities and all that. But I got to a point where I had my wife start to read the reviews and I told her, I was like, I need some feedback at this point in my career. I need you to filter this and just, use the kid gloves and tell me what I need to do. And I think that's helpful. So what I would say to writers is figure out where you are and what level of feedback you can handle. And if you can't handle it, don't read it. If you can, it can help you a lot.
That's really interesting because your wife is acting like a market research company, essentially, giving you, the headline points, the stuff that you can actually work with.
Yeah, a filter. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Jerry, what's coming next from you? We got Lost in Time. What's coming after that?
So the next book, which I actually wrote before Lost in Time, is called Quantum Radio. And it's a science fiction thriller. It's another techno thriller. It's about a quantum physicist who works at CERN, and he developed an algorithm because he thinks that there is a pattern in the data being generated by the collisions in the Large Hadron Collider. And so the story sort of starts when he finds this collision, and he doesn't know what this pattern is. I mean, he thinks it's a message, but he doesn't know, whether it's a message from the future or from the past or from some alien civilization across the galaxy. So what he discovers additionally is that someone else is looking for this message, and that it potentially could change everything we know about, human civilization in the past.
Fantastic. Absolutely brilliant. A.G. Riddle, thank you so much for joining us today. This has been absolutely fascinating, and hope to speak to you again soon.
Thank you for having me.
What are your writing dreams? Finishing that book, quitting the day job, becoming a best-selling author? Well, over 4 years, we've studied the advice of over 300 best-selling authors who've collectively sold over 500 million books. And we are excited to announce the Bestseller Academy. If you're ready to take your writing to the next level with accountability, craft, and coaching, your bestseller dreams are now only a click away. To find out more and apply, visit bestsellerexperiment.com/academy. That's bestsellerexperiment.com/academy. So Mark, we started this podcast, didn't we, talking about your business, your new book business that you're running, your merch business. And here we have a brilliant example from A.G. Riddle of someone who's gone through a different process, started out as an entrepreneur, focused for 10 years, ran a business, and then decided, actually, my passion is to write. And then coming to this place in his life where he said, I just want to be creating. I don't want to be running a business. I don't want to be doing all these ins and outs. And this is the classic challenge, isn't it? It's the classic challenge.
There's a huge irony here as well, in that he starts out as a hugely successful independent author, and then decides that he wants the publisher to take care of all that kind of side of things. Whereas I'm the traditionally published author who's now basically running a business because I don't want the publisher to wants to take, I want to do some of my own stuff. Yeah. So it's a weird crossover. But this is it. There's no one way of doing this. There's no, we're all experimenting, evolving, and trying new things. So it's I quite like this side of stuff. Like I said, I've sort of got a knack for it. I enjoy it, and whereas the Facebook ads and the Amazon ads side of it, I've never really enjoyed at all. So yeah, you've got to find the things that bring you joy, I guess. And I do love, the number one thing I do every day, and we'll talk about Jerry's kind of daily schedule, is the first thing I do is I write. That is the number one passion. But doing this kind of stuff as well, and signings and events and talks and podcasts and all that kind of stuff, that for me is all part of the fun of the fair.
Yeah, it's the wind in your sail in some ways, isn't it? Where you get to actually, meet people, meet your readers, create things. I mean, this, when I was looking at my workload yesterday, thinking like this time of year, combined with the fact that I had that big birthday, last week, it was a moment of reflection where I thought, blimey, you get to another birthday and you think, I'm still, my workload is just increasing, and you kind of step back and you think, at what point will this slow down? At what point will I be able to create all week? My dream, Mark, is to be able to wake up on Monday morning and go, what shall I create today? And then I create something, and I press a button, and it magically goes off to the magic elves, who magically do something with it online that then can people can then engage with it in some way. And I think it's an interesting one. And I think where Jerry's coming from, obviously he focused for 10 years on this business of helping other people have a successful business. And it was obviously around the .com era, which is where I kind of grew up as well. But I've been doing this for 26 years, I realized. I've been running my own businesses and still trying to work it all out in terms of the bit where, and this is the key thing, the bit where it becomes successful and you're not very good at delegating. So for example, take your bookstore. I mean, what if, let's just say, brilliant problem to have, what if you started getting 1,000 orders a day? I mean, you physically couldn't, you'd not be doing anything else other than stuffing envelopes and hiring a van to take them down to the post office. But it's these things as you start a business. It's like, how do you put things in place to then get help?
That's what children are for, exploit.
Exactly. Pay their way.
Exactly.
Well, that's what we did.
I mean, it's interesting. I mean, there are solutions. I know that Queeve, we're talking about Queeve Store. Someone else does that for Queeve. I think Queeve is such a level above me in terms of success and sales, in that he has got someone to do the postage and packing for him, and they're taking care of that side of it for him. So
it's also interesting with Queeve as an example, because we know, I mean, Queeve's for anyone who hasn't heard the interview, we've got a great interview with Queeve on the podcast. But Queeve is also part of the BXP team, which is a kind of exclusive group of authors you get to be a part of if you join the academy. But Queeve has sold well over 500,000, if not a lot more now, books. I think the last time I looked. So this is an author who's incredibly successful in terms of sales, but also still looking at this kind of venture of running his own business. And so I think that you start to ask yourself, you take it to the extreme. Brandon Sanderson. I mean, here's a guy who's multi-million, and now he's just doing, I'm doing this special edition on Kickstarter, and earning more money from that than he's probably ever earned on anything he's ever done in the past. So I love it. I think bring it on. Let's break the models. Let's try things out. Let's see what works. But what Jerry was talking about on the interview was he recognized in himself that he didn't want to run a business.
Yeah.
And I think that's the really important question here for everyone. I think it goes back to as well this idea of indie versus traditional author. Do you promote your own books, or do you push to be traditionally published, so you're leaving everything in quotes? So it's never everything, because you have to do a lot yourself now, even if you're traditionally published, as you well know, Mark.
Oh, yeah.
Or hybrid, or somewhere in the middle. And I think that in some ways you only know for certain until you try it, right?
Yeah,
you only know for certain until you give it.
It's always changing and evolving, and I think this is something we're going to talk about in the sort of extended edition. This idea of success evolves. It's not the same thing today that it will be in 5 years. You're gonna change and want to do different things. I mean, I think ultimately, I would love to do nothing more than just write.
Right. Yeah, that's the dream, isn't it?
Yeah, but in the meantime, to achieve that goal, I need to hustle. I need to sell. Frankly, I need to sell more books.
Yeah.
And I can't sit on my hands and expect my publisher to do all the work or booksellers to do all the work. I've got to be my best. I've got to be my top salesman of the month. That's what I've got in that Glengarry Glen Ross way. If I'm not the top salesman of the month, I get fired, So, I've got to keep banging that drum until, you get authors who get some kind of momentum and the books start selling themselves, which is great, but that is the top 1% that gets that. The rest of us have got to hustle.
Yeah. It's a publisher's dream to have someone like you, though, who's out there actually, ironically, they'll probably see all the sales. And if your little name is like, number one, and then you've got all the other bigger stores below you, they'd be like, blimey. What happened then, of course, Marcus? They'll be saying, do you fancy adding a new section for some of our other authors, Mark? And next thing you know, you've got like Mark Stay's version of Waterstones happening. But let's talk a bit about schedules as well, because one of the things I found fascinating about Jerry's discussion around, just everything about how he spoke, actually, it's like he's I can really understand, coming from that tech entrepreneurial background, which is what I have, I can really understand the methodical way in which he looks at things, analyzes things, decides on schedules. A lot of people don't do that. But I like the fact that he recognizes that mornings are his best hours, and then afternoons when he does editing and email. Now, how many people actually are able to wait until the afternoon to check their email? It's most people, the first thing they do, they wake up and it's flick open email. Oh God, here's my day's problems right in front of me. And I think it's really interesting that he segments his day. But we were talking about this on Monday in the podcast about scheduling, and I was saying to everyone, think about doing a time energy study, because a lot of people lose their mojo when it comes to the afternoon, which is when you should be doing more not mundane tasks like going through email and things like that. But I'm a big advocate for saying bank your writing first thing in the morning.
Yeah, me too. And listen, I know, listeners, there are going to be people, because every time we say this, we get feedback from people going, but I'm a night owl, I'm an afternoon person. That's fine, whatever works for you, but I just, speaking from my own personal experience, 7:30 to 9:30 in the morning is project
sacred writing time.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Yeah,
the door is closed, no emails, no anything. And I get the biggest chunk of writing done. Then, just this week, so I had that. Then it was bin days and recycling. So I put out the bins and recycling and did a bit of washing up. And then I come back in. I had a script meeting with a co-writer on a screenplay that we're working on. And then we had some notes. And then I had an hour. And I thought, actually, I'm going to just write in that hour. And I managed to get 4 or 5 pages of script writing done, which is actually that's a good day's work. Sure. And then the afternoon was just, as you say, it's all the admin stuff. It was podcast prep for our Wednesday recording. It was emails. It was all the little things. It was also, I had to do, I launched a comic book. I had this comic book that we're giving away. So I had to do, because that has to go on, not on one, but 2 websites. It has to go on BookFunnel so I can download it. I have to test that. I have to send a mail out to my newsletter. I have to test that and write that as well. Yeah. So that's an hour and a half maybe. And then it's the emails, and it's, emails are such a time suck. It's one of those things where I know this from when I worked at Orion. I'd have a report to do or something. You'd see emails pinging up, ping, 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 ping. And every time you glance up, you lose so many minutes of concentration, don't you? It really does. Oh, I know. So I end up turning those off and ignoring them. But then you attack them all at once, and then you get them out of the way. And it's interesting. I'm an Apple geek, and I've got, Apple Mail. And it's only now that they've just introduced a thing where it says you can ignore this email till later. You can get a reminder about this email in an hour or tonight or tomorrow. And it's such a great little feature because I think, great, I'm going to set a reminder for that. And I don't feel guilty about ignoring it until that later time.
Yeah. Oh, Mark, I tell you, email. I've been doing a 2-year project on email, and in the kind of spirit of analyzing and the 200-word challenge, I kind of turned that into a game for me with email as well. My goodness me! If I had the time to create the course to teach other people how to I've literally gained. I'm not kidding you. I've gained 22 working days a year by getting on top of my email. It's utterly bonkers. And one day I'm going to document this whole process I went through. I've reduced my email by 60%, which over a lifetime, you don't even want to know what that means in terms of for time that it frees up to do even more admin, or write more books or whatever it might be.
I mean, it's not just email. I was interviewing an author yesterday, and this was an in-person interview, and we're in the same room. And he said, "I apologize. I must reply to this," because he was in a previous meeting and he came to me and he said he had a notification ping up. He said, I have to reply to this notification. I have to do this right now. And he looked at his phone and he thought, what did she contact me on? Was it WhatsApp? Was it Messenger? Was it email? He was like, because it's not just email anymore. We're being bombarded by this stuff from left, right, and centre.
Yeah, it used to just be a phone. It used just to be a phone ringing, didn't it? Remember those days before we had screens? It used to be a phone ringing was the one, or a fax coming through. When
Claire started out as an actor, her agent said, "Get a pager." That's how old we are. She had so she used to get a pager, say, "Audition, give me a call." So she'd go, "Oh, audition, where's a phone?" And she'd go to a phone and
run down to the phone box. Unbelievable. Have you got 10p? I mean, it's amazing, isn't it? It's amazing how our lives have changed. I think I could philosophize about this for hours, but without going into it in too much detail, occasionally we just have to press the pause button on our life and go, a lot's changed in the last 20 years. I mean, compared to the 20 years before that and the 20 years before that, like we're living through, I believe, the biggest, fastest amount of change, and it's not slowing down. It's like we're on this exponential curve of change. But the thing is, when you live it day to day, it's like your kids growing up. You don't see them millimeter by millimeter. But when Auntie walks in the door, like, "Oh, have you grown?" So this is our moment to go, "Oh my gosh!" Like, how bonkers is this world that we're living in? I mean, our biggest challenge today, conflict and wars aside and all those things, is overload, information overload, time overload, complexity. There's this need to simplify our lives. That's the bit I feel really strongly I'm drawn towards right now.
Someone is boiling the frog and we're the frog.
We are the frog. Yeah, but we don't realise it.
Put that on a t-shirt.
But we don't realise it, because the whole analogy of the boiling the frog is that if you turn the temperature up really, really, really slowly, the frog doesn't realise it's being boiled.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the whole point. And we don't realise just how insane our lives have become. But I'm going to solve it all for the world, Mike. I've got a big plan. I do.
Good.
I do. One of these days, when I get time to create, I've got some crazy big ideas around this idea of literally, I think, simplifying our lives, right?
If anyone can save the world, it's you, Mr. D. Just get
awesome.
a bloody move on.
I'm going to get a t-shirt. Time to save the world. Time to save the world. Brilliant stuff. Now, we've got tons more that we want to talk about around this amazing interview with AJ Riddle and AG Riddle, sorry. And we've got an extended episode for everyone who supports this podcast, all the Academy members as well. We're going to talk about the learning experience, treating your first book or treating writing generally as a learning experience, and how that can change how you approach your writing. We're going to talk about the 20 drafts that Jerry did. And then we're going to have a real quiet deep dive on understanding what you want as an author, this idea of defining success for you and investing in yourself. We're going to talk a little bit about the doubt train, which was one of our favorite quotes from the episode. And this whole area of reader response and this idea of filtering that feedback, which we love. and then talk about focusing on your passions and how that connects with your authors and your readers. So if you'd like to dive in with Mark and I, please come and support this podcast. It helps us keep this on the road, and you get tons and tons of really great extra food for thought. So pop over to academy.bestsellerexperiment.com or bestsellerexperiment.com/patron to get access to the extended podcast. So Mark, anything happening on the wins and socials front this week?
There's some great stuff here. Now, first is a bit of a struggle. Okay, so this is Alec Waite on the Academy, and he says, I've been struggling a bit over the last 2 weeks, managed to get some words down, but they weren't coming easy. I have 3 great characters, 3 starting points, but after the first 30,000 words, everything ground to a stop. I just wasn't really sure what they should be doing. I'm pantsing for the first time. I was hoping they would tell me where they wanted to go. No such luck. So, with the help of writing the beta blurb, I sketched out a solid but still flexible story, and everything is falling into place. Managed 400 words yesterday, a solid 800 today. Writing the blurb was so much help. Mr. D, the beta blurb, explain what that is for the listeners.
I was going to say, yeah, because a lot of people think, beta blurb, what's that? That's something that we defined and designed within the Academy as one of the very first things that you need to do. If you've started writing your book, you have to kind of stop writing your book and design your beta blurb. Or if you're about to write your book, writing your beta blurb is the equivalent of imagining what's going to be on the back of your book or on that first paragraph of Amazon before you actually really get into the meat of your book. In fact, you can do it at any stage if you haven't done it, but we have a whole course on the Academy of taking people through the step-by-steps of creating that. And my goodness me, does it give people huge amounts of focus, doesn't it? It acts as almost like this benchmark to keep going back to and adapting and changing, but keep going back to whenever you get stuck. It's like, what am I actually writing here? What's the core thing that I'm trying to get through?
Very, very good. We got one. The headline here is not a win yet, but I'm going to celebrate. So this is from Karen on the Academy, Karen's story. She said, I've just heard from my agent. The novel that's out in subscription with him has got a response from an editor at a fab publishing house who loves the story so far, still reading. And she was checking if it's still available. It's only a nibble and nothing at all is guaranteed, but I'm celebrating that an editor is enjoying it and I can live in the world of maybe this will happen for a little while. So that's the first bit of good news from Karen, and that's fantastic. That is brilliant.
Huge.
But the second bit of good news is my favorite. This is brilliant. No one else can. This is so unique. Second bit of good news today, and this one is a win. I've been trying to find a shepherd or shepherdess willing to spend time with me for research on my current work in progress. My city slicker protagonist spends some time on a sheep farm and I ideally want to experience a bit of what he's getting himself into. The next email I opened after my agents was a shepherdess offering me some dates in November to spend on the farm with her. Isn't that,
Wow.
Talk about defined success. That's I love it. That's absolutely brilliant.
Only in a writer's world as well do you get to kind of hang out with bus drivers, shepherdesses, surgeons. Like you pick your or choose your own adventure. You can get to find out. And I mean, it's a bit like being an actor, isn't it? Like you think about these people that doing a role, they spend months working alongside. You get to do that as a writer as well if you get the opportunity. Fantastic.
Great stuff. And Kate Baker in the Academy, she says, my NaNoWriMo month is going to be NaCoAtNo, okay, which translates into National Course Attendance November. While many of you will type words daily, it's my intention to spend the month completing all Academy courses I've yet to finish or even start. So good luck with that, Kate. Thank you so much.
That's fantastic. I love it.
And finally, I mean, we have listeners maybe tell us that books have been published. I actually had a listener thrust a copy of their book into my hand the other day, so I thought I've got to plug this. So this is from Janet Groom, who I think she came to the live show, or it might have been my book. I think it was the live show actually in person, and her book, The Naked Knitting Club, is out now. And I think, look at that, woolly bra and knickers on the cover of that. Brilliant. So congrats on that, Janet, as well. Well done. Great stuff.
Well, great title. That brings up.
It's good, isn't it?
I bet you get your knitting done fast if you're naked. Right?
Well, there's only one way to find out, isn't it? Look, folks, if you want to get in touch, we're on Facebook, Bestseller Experiment. Twitter and Instagram is @BestsellerXP. And if you go to bestsellerexperiment.com, there is a contact tab there where you can drop us a line. So do that right now.
And if for any reason you missed the extended version of this podcast, folks, you missed a goodie. There's a lot of information and good stuff in there. So pop along to bestsellerexperiment.com/support or join the Academy at academy.bestsellerexperiment.com to get all of that extra good stuff. And don't forget, folks, if you would like to get the writing habit of a lifetime, and it has changed many, many people's lives listening to this podcast, go along to the 200wordchallenge.com and sign up for free and start your own streak of 7 days. Can you write for 200 words a day for 7 days and see where that goes? Absolutely fantastic. Do try that out. And if you would like to send us a note, a message, go along to the website, bestsellerexperiment.com, click on the Contact Us button and send us a note. And whilst you're there, click on the newsletter button and join up to our podcast newsletter and get all the upcoming podcasts we're going to be doing, plus everything you'll learn from the existing podcasts we've got out right now. So, Mr. Stay, good luck. You're off to Comic-Con tomorrow, is it?
Yes. At the time of recording, Comic-Con is tomorrow. I'm doing a panel. Lots of old friend, former guests of the podcast I'll be seeing and listeners of the podcast. So I'm really, really looking forward to that.
Excellent stuff. Well, I'm sure we'll hear all about that in next week's edition. So if you want to find out how that goes, do tune in. But until then, folks, it's a goodbye from Mark 1.
And a goodbye from Mark 2.
Goodbye.